for it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey everyone, it's Dorka, and hope you're all doing well today. Today I'm doing an interview with Mike from Dork Arts Comics, and what's funny is I saw his stuff on Instagram and messaged him out of the blue asking if he'd be interested to do an interview, and he was kind enough to make the time and willing to jump in. So let's kick it off. Definitely, Mike. Introduce yourself and what comic project are you working on?
Okay. Hi, my name is Mike. I self-publish comics under the name Dork Arts Comics. Right now, I am working on the third comic in like a initial 4 comic, I guess, arc right now, if you want to call it that, or phase, if we want to do the whole MCU thing. I currently have three that I've completed already. There's the first one I did was this character, Burn Unit. He was my first sort of OC that I've done a comic on. Second one, Sidney James. And then the last one that I did was a fun little 7-page comic I did called Cannoli Girl.
Okay.
And so like I have like these 4 or 5 characters. They all kind of exist in the same world, and eventually they all cross paths with each other, building up to, if you want to use the MCU references, like it builds up to that kind of Avengers moment where they all kind of come together. And then my plan is to go back to the drawing board, proverbially and literally, doing issue 2 of each of those characters, and then building up to the next one. So like my plan is to kind of follow that formula, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's not a bad formula. It worked.
Yeah.
So what inspired the series? Where'd the ideas come from for these characters and the stories?
I mean, like anybody, I think, that does comics, whether it's superhero comics, horror comics, if it's, manga, anime, whatever. Like, I mean, I think like a lot of us, in terms of the traditional comics, like I kind of grew up on a healthy diet of X-Men and Superman and Batman and the big 2, as it were, Marvel and DC. But never really like understanding what it was beyond like, oh, this is like a really cool picture of Colossus, or like, oh, that's a really cool like Batman drawing or whatever. And like, I knew that people drew these things, and I obviously like there's people like creating this stuff, but like having no real idea of like what it was, and not really any kind of deeper appreciation beyond just like the aesthetics of it. And then I, like anybody, I was reading 13, 14 years old, you kind of get out of it and onto other things. And it was always there. Like I always liked kind of hearing about the characters, or like I was really stoked when like the Iron Man movie came out in like 2008. And so like that appreciation for the characters was always there, and I always liked them. And and then I got into playing a game, like an online video game called DC Universe Online, where you make your own characters, you give them whatever abilities, and you are thrust into this world with Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman. And, you interact with other players too, who are doing the same thing, making their own characters and playing this game in this world. And through that, I got really into that, and then that's where I made these characters, like these 4 characters initially, and was just playing them just to play them and have fun and hang out with other people and nerd out, as it were. And then you get into the forums of the games and just kind of hearing what people are working through or how they're getting through things. And then there's these little fan fiction sections, and people are writing stories about their characters, and some of them are really cool. And I was like, oh, okay, like, I'll take a crack at this. And started just writing stories about, primarily, I call him Bernie, primarily Bernie, just kind of in this, established world. And then I kind of dabbled into like writing him in his own world. And, then that kind of got me back into reading comics and getting back into like seeing what Batman, what the Hulk's up to, what these characters have been, and reading their stories again. And then I read like just what I thought, and again, not that I'm like Alan Moore or anything like that. I mean, reading what I thought was like just like a really bad Batman comic. And I'm like, what? Like, this just doesn't feel like, this is like way too wordy. Like, did Alan Moore write this? What? And, and I was like, then that kind of got me thinking like, well, like I could write a better story than that. And that kind of got me like, oh, and that got me thinking about like people self-publish stuff all the time. Like people draw their own stuff, do their own stuff, put it out there. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, maybe I'll. And then so like at the time I couldn't draw worth a lick. And, I knew the stories that I wanted to tell. And then, I was, looking for artists, and, because my drawing ability didn't extend beyond just scribbles in the corners of notebooks and stuff like that, when I should have been listening to my science teacher or whatever. So that I was looking for artists, and, people nibble and flake. And finally I just like, you know what, like I'm just going to figure this out myself. And I was in a position where I was lucky enough to have, a decent job with, a lot of free time. And I just would shut my door a lot of times and put on tutorials on YouTube.
Okay.
And, practice and practice and practice, and then work off of reference images. And then from that, like a style slowly starting to emerge.
Awesome.
And I've just kind of been doing that ever since.
Awesome. That's what I like about what you just said, which also reminded me of a last interview I did, was that you found time within your day. You have a day job. You'd found bits of time within your day to just work at something you want to do, which again, I definitely encourage everyone to do. Find those moments in your day. If you really want to do something, even if it's 10 minutes, work at it.
Yeah. And yeah, I just kept chipping away at it. Things got easier, definitely even from like, that was like what, 2014, 2015 is when I really started making like a concerted effort at this.
Okay.
To get better at drawing. And, and then even from that, I look at the stuff that I was doing then, and even now I'm like, okay, like I'm doing something right. Like this is,
right.
Like I don't feel nervous to approach a task anymore. Like, so, it comes together if you keep at it.
Definitely. Yeah. I was about to had a question to ask, which was, I forgot. Well, actually what I wanted to do was, kind of jump over to your website, which, you actually answered a question I wanted to ask, which was, it's here on the homepage of Mike's website, which is dorkartscomics.wixsite.com.
Yeah, I gotta clean that up
in the description. And like what you said here about something that started out as a time killer, born out of frustration, turned into something very fulfilling. So the frustration was the Batman story?
No, the frustration was just not being able to find anyone to work to collaborate with.
Okay.
Like the frustration was like finding, getting people to be like, okay. And again, like, I don't have like a ton of money to throw at somebody to work on this stuff with me. And like, so like finding people willing to kind of, play ball with a little bit, and then just, drop out or ghost me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that was the frustration of like, like wanting to do this, wanting to, contribute to this medium, and then, just kind of people dropping out. And that's when I was like, all right, fine, I'm just gonna do this myself.
Awesome. Um, I'm just jumping over to so on Mike's website also there's a shop where you can buy copies of his comics. I see one for Burn Unit and Sidney James so far.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you next was how much was written before you were ready to start drawing, or did they kind of come together, the writing and the drawing at the same time?
If I'm gonna be honest, like really, like only about 5% of it was written, because like I knew, like, so like when we're talking about the Bernie comic, which was the first one, was like kind of the genesis of all of this. Like I knew how I wanted. I knew what the opening scene was. Like I knew where I wanted to start the story, and I knew where I wanted to end it. Like I knew I knew what I wanted that last page to be and to sort of say and reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had like effectively 28 pages to fill in between there. And I've thought about like and I really tried to think about how I approach doing these books. And like a lot of it is like I'll hear a song, or I'll hear I'll hear like a phrase or something like that, generally from music, lyrics of some kind. And something about it just resonates with me. And then my writing process is I have a little piece of paper here on my drawing board with the character's name, and then like, the lyrics or like the line from the song. And that sort of serves as like the theme that I'm trying to maintain throughout the book.
Okay.
And in terms of like what I'm trying to convey with the character, and then I try to think about it in terms of like animation, if that makes sense. Like in animation, you have keyframes, which are like the big shots that like, like the big sort of poses or the big scenes that the animators draw. And like I try to think about it in terms of like that, like keyframes, and like, okay, I want to have these 4 or 5 keyframes in the book to like convey this feeling, or to show this, or to show that. And then how do I get from keyframe 1 to keyframe 2 in a way that makes sense, is relatable, is that builds up to that moment in a believable way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I approach it.
Okay. So when you're actually, like, when you're sitting down and drawing or writing and working on your comics, do you have like a ritual or just habits that you go back to? For me, I like to sometimes play a movie in the background when I'm working, or sometimes listen to music, or sometimes I just need quiet. Do you have something?
I can't work in silence for some reason.
I know, yeah.
But I mean, I find myself, if I've thought about it, like the time that I've spent working on primarily like the first 2 books, I put on podcasts. And I put on either like one of a few different comics related podcasts, or my go-to a lot is there's a documentary. It's on YouTube. I've watched it like dozens and dozens of times, and it's called Jack Kirby Storyteller.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And it's about Jack Kirby, like the artist that the MCU that we have right now. All this, like without him and his pencil, we don't have any of that.
Yeah.
He's the guy that you think of a Marvel character, he created it, and he's the guy that built that house. And so I put that on, and in some way, in a weird way, I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna channel Kirby a little bit, and like
Definitely.
I hope to have like a fraction of that man's talent in whatever, but like, because like, any comic artist, like we all bow at the altar of Kirby. I mean, we all have our favorite artists that like, that we are inspired by, but like we all bow at the altar of Kirby. So
Definitely, yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
So between podcasts or generally that, just to kind of like keep my head in that creative space, as it were.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Podcast. That's a good one. So yeah, sometimes I listen to podcasts, but yeah, usually I just like the noise of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it varies on sometimes the noise movies or maybe it's a drama film. It just depends. But yeah, sometimes silence is hard to work in, which is weird because a lot
Yeah.
of people say they need it. Um, oh yeah. What I wanted to ask next was any comics that you like to keep next to you that you've like to flip through either for inspiration or maybe for you like the way the artist colors the comics. What do you keep next to you?
I, I generally like my, to kind of piggyback off my Altar of Kirby,
Mhm.
comment there. My favorite artist is Sam Keith.
Mhm.
And he did, he's most probably well known for his series he did for Image, The Max.
The Max.
Um, yeah. And I mean, he's done like phenomenal work for Marvel and like just has his own style. And like you could look at something and you're like, that's Sam Keith, that's, fill in the character or whatever. And I love the way that he draws,
Mhm.
and he does this combination like in his early stuff in the 90s, when he was doing the Max, like it was a lot of like digital coloring and stuff. And the
Okay.
stuff that he does now that I see on his blog a lot, he does like really awesome like colored pencil work. I think it's colored pencil,
Hmm.
but like just it's his style is like really cartoonish in some ways, but like also has this really like mature quality to it. Like
Hmm.
the anatomy is like exaggerated and doesn't always make a lot of sense.
Cool.
And like, but like I just like his style, just like that cartoony, style where like for me, like looking at I go to like a lot of his work and especially like on the Max, like I look at a lot of like his page layouts, because he gets super creative with his page layouts and stuff like that. And for me, like that's kind of the go-to looking at his stuff.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we actually got a first comment from Jam Create, who
Oh,
says, I don't know if you can see comments, but he says Sam
I,
Keith was awesome.
oh, okay. I mean, I can see it now. Yeah. His stuff is awesome. And like, I mean, and I was thinking about like, why do I like his stuff so much? And for
Mhm.
me, it's like, he started out doing, Marvel stuff. He made a really big name for himself with the Marvel Presents with like Wolverine and all that stuff that he did there prior to going to being that second wave of Image guys. But Marvel has always had their house style, whether, it was Kirby or Ramita or whoever. But like Sam would draw those characters. He would draw Wolverine. He would draw Ghost Rider. He would draw Hulk. But it was like he was never concerned with doing it in that house style. It was always his style. And I'm like, yeah, that's why, because like he just was always doing his own thing. And I think that that's something that I try to like, keep in me is like, I just want to do my own thing. I just want to draw stuff the way that I want to draw it. And like, I have a lot of respect for, all those guys, but like, I just kind of want to do my own thing.
Definitely. Actually, to jump off of that, doing your own thing is that I noticed, and you talked about it, that you don't do a lot of fan art.
I no, I'm doing more, but I think I'm trying to stay away from like those, more iconic characters, if you were, as it were. Like I did one Batman and I'm like, I'm never drawing Batman again. Like I don't, it's either too intimidating or what, I don't know.
Mm.
But like I've done some fan art. I've done Hellboy. I've done Cerebus the Aardvark. I did Onion Knight from the Dark Souls series.
Never heard of Onion Knight.
I recently did Rorschach from the Watchmen.
Okay.
And I think like one or two others.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I don't. I mean, and it's not like a disrespect thing. It's just like I just want to draw my own characters, or like I'll look at an image of like, Beast from the X-Men in a pose, and I'm like, oh, that would be really cool to draw Bernie in that pose or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I end up doing that versus drawing Beast or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It just kind of goes back to like I just kind of want to draw my own stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely get that. Did you do when you were practicing drawing, were you doing any kind of, I guess, fan art there in a sense to practice, or were you just
Yeah,
um
I have a lot of sketchbooks with like Spider-Man heads, and I actually found an old drawing I did of Rorschach back in like 2015 or something,
Mhm.
and I posted that with the updated one I did in the last week or two,
Mhm.
just for like frame of reference. And I've Violator from Spawn, I've drawn Spawn, Ren and Stimpy, Popeye, like. So like there are like established characters in my sketchbook when I was just learning kind of
Mhm.
how to draw different things and Ninja Turtles or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, but like I just kind of got away from that when I felt, and I think it's because I started to feel more comfortable just doing my own thing. Like I got to a place where I was like, okay, I know what I want these characters to look like, and I feel like I can take that image that's in my head and translate it, fairly accurately onto the page.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's good. What did I wanted to ask? Well, I was thinking. Well, I don't know why I just mentioned this. When I was asking you about your ritual and what you like to do when you're working, is I think also I was thinking of it because I saw you posted pictures of your workspace. I think on Instagram, and it looks so nice. Looks so comfortable. So,
I can't take a lot of credit for that. That the design of my workspace is due mostly to the credit is due mostly to my wife.
okay. Okay.
I went to a con, like when we bought our house, we had a couple extra rooms, and I had gone to a con for the day, and then when I came home, or she was sending me pictures the other day, because I had really no idea she was doing this. We had talked about getting me like a drawing table and stuff like that. But she had gotten this really cool like Marvel wallpaper, these black and white panels of like the different characters, and she put it up on like for like the accent wall, and she designed what the table could look like and where my table would go, and like it was really like this studio was because of her, really.
That's awesome.
Like I put my own little things here and there, like my markers and where I wanted that stuff, but like the overall design of it is much to her credit.
That's cool. Always, I think it always helps. I mean, just in general, I hear from people. It always helps when you have support a spouse who's also supportive and helps you do that. Makes things easier. Does your wife read your comics?
She has, like, my wife is not not much into the comics genre. I mean, like she knows like Batman and Superman and stuff, like anybody else would,
Mhm.
but she's not, she doesn't, she's not into it like I am. She knows it's. Oh, I think, did I lose you?
Oh
What?
no. Yeah.
Oh, it looked like we were lagging for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She she knows it's something for me and it's kind of my thing, and like I don't, it doesn't need to be her thing or whatever.
Yeah.
She just knows it's something for me that I like to do, and she she likes that I like it.
Cool. That's awesome. We've got actually a couple of good comments here. First one from Jam Creates Again, which was as a kid I drew so many turtles, so many turtles. Which actually I want to ask you: do you like the old school Ninja Turtles, or do you draw the, I guess, the newer comics? I don't know what the newer comics are even.
I haven't really kept up on the Ninja Turtles beyond the 80s animated series.
Okay. Okay.
And that was actually my first introduction to them was through that, and like I wasn't really aware that they were like a comic prior to that. I also then in kind of backtracking on all this stuff, and like I learned that the animated series was a much more toned down version of what those original comics were.
Definitely.
But yeah, like I mean, I haven't really kept up on like a lot of those established characters. Like I'm kind of into like reading the independent stuff, you know, or like the really indie stuff right now. Again, I have nothing but respect for Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird and what they did and what they're doing. It's not something I have like gravitated towards recently.
Hmm. Yeah, same. I'm more interested in how they basically how they started with an independent comic and then grew it to this huge franchise, like just how
Yeah,
it all came together. There's a really good. Oh, lost you for a sec.
my back.
No, no, I just seen.
Let's try again. How about now?
Oh, yes, you're back.
Okay, okay.
Speaking of YouTube documentaries, like you mentioned earlier, there was a really good one. I think it's 30 minutes, but it's about Eastman and Laird and how they grew the franchise and from the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing into like the massive thing. And I think one of them even left for a bit to
Yep.
start his own thing, but then he came back.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw that one too. I think it was like the toys that made us or whatever, or made our
Yeah,
childhood or something. And there was the episode about the Ninja Turtles there.
nice. Yeah. Um, and the next comment we have is from Comics on Lockdown, who also does a lot of he does a lot of fan art on his YouTube channel, especially of classic characters like I think X-Men he did a few times. But actually, and the question is great because it kind of relates to this, which is how much did it initially start? Did it initially cost to start your comic?
Um, Initially, it cost me, you know, the price of a pack of paper and whatever pencils I was using.
Mhm.
um, I tried to look for cost effective, resources. What I, you know, so like I was using Canson comic art boards for a while, and I could get those relatively cheap. But then, for whatever reason, you know, the art store that I use stopped selling them.
Oh,
I mean, so like the actual like drawing of it is not really like, you know, the actual start is really not that cost effective. I mean, it's not that pricey. I mean,
mhm.
you know, like I use 11 by 17 Bristol boards, and they're lined with the blue line for the live areas. I get those through a company called Blue Line
Oh,
Comic Pro Comic Supplies.
okay.
Blue
Never.
Line. If you Google Blue Line, what is it? Where is it? Yeah, Blue Line Pro Comic Supplies. Um, I can get a pack of like 50 of them for like less than $30.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then, you know, like for my digital inking and coloring, I use Krita, and that's entirely free.
Yeah.
And I love Krita.
Mhm.
Just, you know, the customization of everything, and, you know, it's, you know, and it's free and it's awesome. Um, and then for my lettering,
Mhm.
I use like, so what I'll do is like when I'll draw the page in pencil on the Bristol, I'll
Mhm.
scan that, throw it into Krita, um, and then I'll do the coloring and lighting and rendering and stuff there.
Mhm.
And then I will take that image and throw it into this program called Comic Life, and I think it's called Comic Life 3. I think
Oh.
they're in the third version right now.
Mhm.
And it's that program. It's not much in the way of like. There's really not any like drawing or anything you can do in that program. It's more like a basic kind of image editing program.
Mhm.
But like it has this really awesome feature for like, you know, sound effect balloons and
Cool.
captions and, you know, text, text balloons and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And like that, I do all my lettering that way, and it's really, you know, user friendly. Literally can type it out, type if I want a bubble, if I want a caption, if I want a sound effect, type out what I want, literally drag it down into the image, and then manipulate it from there where I want it, the size, the font, the color, everything. And that's like, I think I paid like 20, $25 for it.
Okay.
And then the printing, I use Kablam printing. And like they're a print-on-demand service. They're you can tell them, they have all the order forms there right up the front on their website. And for, I think the Sydney comic was the larger of the two. So for a total of, I think like 40, I think it was like 44 pages, full color for one comic. I think it was going to cost me less than $5 to print, to have them print it. And then, obviously, the more you buy, the less expensive it is and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, so I mean, it's not, and I do it on like small runs, I guess, if you want to call it that. Like I will do a comic and I'll order, 10 to 20 copies at a time, and, hand sell them here, whenever I can.
Awesome.
So it's not, I mean, it's as much as you want to put into it, I guess, is the long-winded answer.
No worries. Actually Jam Creates just asked a question that I was thinking of, which is, do you use Kablam's Indie Planet for digital sales?
No, I don't. Not because of like any dislike for it, really, just because I haven't really explored it much. I've heard people have, some decent success there. Others not so much. And it's not out of any dislike for it. It's just, I just haven't looked into it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, cause I noticed on your website, you have, for one, you've got your own website, and also, you have a shopping cart with Wix. Were you able to make that for free with Wix, or do you have to pay to add a shopping cart?
And I think that like that was free. Okay. I have to go back and kind of clean up that website. I kind of haven't really shown it much affection lately. But yeah, like it was pretty easy to kind of put it together. And it was something that they were, for what I was looking at, they offered it, and I was like, all right, let me try this, and just kind of put everything in one place.
Yeah.
I also have like a Redbubble store. That I different designs or logos, I'll put them on a bunch of different products and put it out there, and every now and then I'll remind people that I have it. Yeah. Usually I just buy things for myself.
That's good. How do you like using Redbubble? I've heard of them. I know a couple people use them, but not a lot many.
It's really not hard. Like it's really easy. Like you can just like whatever logo, whatever image you want to upload there, it's really simple to do. And then they'll show you it on all their products that they offer, and you can, go into the individual, products and move the image around where you want it, scale it to certain places or sizes. And you can also decide whether or not you want to offer that product with your stuff on it. So you can either disable it or enable it if you want.
Okay.
And it doesn't, like, I think like 20 minutes, half hour, and I was pretty set with a couple of things. So it's actually really easy to use, really simple to navigate. And I mean, you're only making a small amount on it because you're only supplying the artwork. You're not supplying the actual. Whoops, sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
My phone fell.
Oh, no worries.
All right, are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to kind of navigate and get yourself set up real quick.
Okay, cool. So you already talked about the tools you use, which is great. There's so many things I want to ask. Oh, yes. We had briefly done like a chat, sort of like a prep chat with each other, also to get to know each other, since it was such a thrown together meetup. But so you sell your comics, you're focused on selling your comics physically and through your own store. You're not so much doing like a web comic on Webtoons. Is that
No, is that a what?
is that intentional? Why do you choose to go that way?
Um, One, I just like having like the physical object, and that's from me just growing up. I think, part of that is just from me growing up and going to the comic shop and getting the comics and taking them home and reading them. Um, and just liking having the physical product to look at, to flip the pages and see all that stuff there in front of you, and like in a tangible form.
Yeah.
And then some of that also is, um, when I went to a con in 2017 and stumbled into a panel that just happened to get moved around and wasn't scheduled for the time, on just indie comics, kind of doing your own thing. And the guys at the panel there, were really informative, really helpful, and some of them actually took time and talked with me afterwards, which was a big motivator in kind of getting me to where I am now.
Mhm.
And I remember asking one of the guys, his name is Mike Doherty, and I was like, what do you tell someone who's, walking around the floor, wants to be a part of this world in some capacity, but is like nervous and sort of not feeling like he's good enough to, kind of do it. And I have to type this up and print it up and put it on a wall somewhere because I keep coming back to it. He was like, I would tell him, show up and finish something. He was like, because like he's like, and he expanded on it afterwards, and he was like, you'll be amazed at how much easier it is to find opportunity, if you can show someone a finished product and say like, I did this, this is what I'm doing and here it is, versus being that person where like, somebody's thinking about working with you and it's like, well, all right, well, what have you done? What are you doing? It's like, well, I have this idea. I got these 2 pages, or I got these 3 pages done, but it's not done yet, but like just having something that you can show that you finished and took from idea to, the physical product, is, he was like, it'll help you out a lot.
Yeah. Had you already started your comic series by that time or not yet?
Not really. I think at that point I had only had, just in the first book, the Bernie book, I think I had like 3 pages just inked at that point. I hadn't like, I hadn't gotten my tablet or my digital tools yet. I was just drawing pages on the boards, and I only had like 3 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But left that panel with like a like kind of like a shot of motivation.
Yeah, definitely.
And then from there it was kind of like game on.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's always good. I don't get out to cons much, but I think it's always good to go because you get that burst of inspiration just being around other artists and also like you said, indie creators.
Yeah, and I still talk to those guys,
Okay.
like not regularly, but like every now and then, like if I see them at a con or if I see what they're doing on Instagram, I try to, message them and say hey and, give them thanks and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah. How's the do you sell your comics at your local comic store?
No, because the store doesn't like do that on the regular. Like what they do, and this is my plan for this year, if the world has any sense of normalcy to it by this time, they have free comic book day, which I know like a lot of the retailers, comic stores have that first Saturday in May. And it's sort of like a little mini con for the store, and they let local people and indie people come in and kind of set up shop and peddle their stuff. And my plan is to do that in May, and then I'm planning on doing my first proper con in July of this year. Again, if the world has any sense of normalcy to it, I'm going to be taking the 3 books. And a bunch of prints and setting up shop at Plastic City Comic Con in Fitchburg, Mass. It's a really cool 1 day con. I was there as a patron, 2019,
Hmm.
and kind of read more into like what goes into tabling at a con and looking at the fees, and the table fee was very reasonable.
Hmm.
And I have my application in there and just sort of waiting to hear back about it. But that's the plan for May and July of this year, and then beyond that, like, unknown.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it's yeah, it would be. I mean, again, yeah, I didn't go to cons much, but now that we can't go anywhere, I suddenly miss them. And hearing you talk
Oh,
about them, makes me want to go back.
I miss them so much. Like in for like going back to that like frustration comment, things born out of frustration. Like this year was the first year that I was gonna like, well, not this year, last year was the year I was really gonna like make a go to kind of put myself out there as a creator
Hmm.
and like say, like kind of like show that other part of my identity. Like I have my professional and personal identity, but then that identity as the artist, the creator, and stepping out and doing that.
Yeah,
And then the world was like, and nobody's doing anything.
I know. Yeah.
And just that sense of frustration, and I know that there's countless other things to be way more frustrated about. But like for me, just like not being able to step out and do that and having to like have that exercise and patience,
Yeah.
so like I'm looking forward to picking that up this year and hopefully doing that a little bit more and stepping out more in that capacity.
Mm, sure. Yeah, definitely. So I've been noticing the guitar cases in the back as well as your poster, which makes me want to ask, what do you like to do when you're not making comics?
um like I don't really do much of anything else. I mean, aside from my life with my wife and our daughter and my work life. Like I've been playing guitar since I was in high school. Occasionally, lately, I don't pick them up a lot, but I do play and have played for a while. Um, and I would go out and play at open mics when I was, like a different person. And I mean, again, and I think that like it's just listening to music and playing music, and that's kind of where I get ideas for some of this stuff that I do. Um, I've been playing guitar longer, in terms of in the entirety of it, like playing guitar longer than I've been drawing or doing comics. But comics is really, and drawing and all that stuff is really kind of where my recreational time is spent as of late.
Awesome. Um, oh yeah. So when we had chatted, you talked about how you're not interested in doing comics full time. You're happy to keep it to like have kind of that double life in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, double life. Yeah. Um, I'm a secret agent, and
Yeah.
hopefully nobody's watching this of any, but yeah, like I am very established in my career as a therapist,
Hmm.
and I've been working you know been working in the mental health field since what 2008,
Oh.
and working as a therapist since 2010, 2011.
Hmm.
And I mean, I love my work, and I've met some just amazing people in that time. But it's not like that isn't everything to me. Like it's not, that doesn't make up me entirely. And this was something, the comics and the art, it has evolved over years.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's a hobby, and I say hobby because hobbies cost money.
Hmm.
Um, but it's something that is like release for me. It's an escape from me to certain things. It's my stress relief.
Hmm.
Um, and so like, and also like having a family and like wanting to be a support to them and contribute and be there and everything like that. you know, having a career in art or comics is also just really hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not consistent all the time.
Yeah.
And, like, I am happy with it just being a hobby. And if I can make it a hobby that kind of just supports itself,
Mm-hmm.
like that's enough for me.
Yeah.
And if I'm just, and another thing is like, it's just for me, it's like just connecting with other creatives and just meeting people and seeing what they're doing. And if I'm lucky enough to get to do something with them, if it's like a fan art piece, if it's like a cover for something they're doing, or vice versa, like, it's more about like kind of just being part of a community and
Mm-hmm.
kind of helping each other along, whether it is through like, hey, check out this person, or hey, look what this person did, or hey, I'm working with this person, or we're doing this, and just kind of being a part of that community.
Definitely. Yeah, I think yeah, that was a great point when you brought it up the first time, which is I'm sure a lot of us want to do art or do our comics full time. But there's also an alternative. You don't have to. It can be something you can just do on the side for fun and have your day job. And I think it's also great that you have a main job that you enjoy. So
Yeah.
it's good. It's a healthy balance.
Yeah, like going into this, it was never about taking down Marvel or DC or anything like that. It was, and some of the attitude comes from, a lot of the documentaries that I watch, because like listening to the Jack Kirby documentary or the podcast or like any sort of documentary or thing about comics, whether it is from like a technical standpoint, a historical standpoint, one of the things that I heard from a documentary called Comic Book Independence was, I forgot the name of the guy that said it, and I don't even want to try to guess, but he's like, if you're going to do comics, like you have to like love doing it. And they were like, because you can either, he was like, you can either work on a project that you don't necessarily like and make a lot of money, or you can work on a project that you really, really like and maybe not make a lot of money on.
Right.
And, not that it's about, and these guys were like professional artists and stuff like that, but like, like, he's like, they were like, you have to love doing it, because like the amount of time that you put into something and what you get back from it, it's not really, like you have to love it.
Yeah.
And, so, and also like, I think a part of that mentality for me of like just doing this as like a fun side hobby kind of release and stress relief thing for me. For some reason, I was remembering a story that my mom, like not a story that my mom told me, but a story about my mom. My mom, worked in professional settings all her life, but on the side would do like wedding cakes and birthday cakes and all sorts of pastries for different events for family and for friends and stuff like that. And I remember I was like, I don't know, 15 or something like that. And she was working on this wedding cake in our dining room. And I was like, and she's good at it. I'm biased, but she's good at it. And I was like, like, you like doing this stuff. Like, why don't you think about opening up a cake shop or a bakery or something like that? And, do that for work. And she's like, well, then it's work.
Oh.
And at 15, I was like, well, like, what? Like, why would you not want to, and again, it's just 15-year-old me being ignorant, and she was like, if this is like, I do this for fun, and I get to do it, and it's fun for me to do this, and like, I can be selective and I can be choosy about when I do something, how I do it, and if I do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, if I open up a shop, I don't have that luxury. I have to do it. I have to do stuff that I might not want to do, or I might not always have the most time to do.
Right.
But if I got to keep the doors open, keep the lights on, keep food in the fridge, do all that stuff, like, I lose the ability to sort of, it's not fun anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And then that, for some reason, that just like kind of always, I think, was at the back of my head in doing a lot of this stuff, is like, I'm lucky to have the career that I have.
Mhm.
And like, this has turned into something, just a fun side thing that I do for fun. And it's turned into something fulfilling and rewarding in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's a great again a great alternative way of looking at it because yeah, I'm sure a lot of artists want to be full time and kind of grind away, but maybe yeah, you can just have it where it's yeah, maybe you can just have it where it's just something you do for fun.
Yeah.
Um, what about creative block, writer's block, artist block? Do you ever get it?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said no. I mean, I think I've been stuck at times in, like, again, going back to like the whole keyframe thing, looking at like, okay, how am I going to get from here to here in the story, like, and doing it in a relatable, believable way.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, like I'm working on the book for my character Adrian Hodges, and if you go on the Instagram, he's the guy in the green hoodie that he's the wizard magic guy. I have the cover and I have 9 pages of that book done right now, and I know I'm trying to figure out how I want to finish the scene that is kind of coming to a close in the book right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the other parts of the book that I want to show, but I can't get to those before I wrap this up. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do I do that in a way that, again, feels believable.
Right.
As believable as it can be with a guy that talks to ghosts and deals with monsters and can wave his hands and do all sorts of magic-y things.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm kind of stuck there.
Gotcha.
And I'm, and it's twofold. It's like trying to figure out what to do, but also like from a technical standpoint, how do I want to lay that page out? I've got a couple of like scribbles in my sketchbook where it's like, okay, maybe this, and like just really just kind of scribble out like a page layout or whatever. But it's like, all right, just kind of figuring out how to get to that end point for that scene is like, I'm like, I have no idea how to do this right now.
For sure. Yeah. Let me think. I mean, I'm running out of ideas, questions to ask. Of course, like always, I don't want to take up your whole day. I'm sure you've got work ahead of you.
I've got some time.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, what I like about just stuff you've said so far is, even though you're doing this as a side hobby, there's a lot of great points you've made about that can help people who want it to be a full-time thing, such as, just finish something, get something made. The fact that you have a website, build your website, put yourself out there, building a community. You worked on, you talked about how you built a community on Instagram. How do you go about doing that, given that Instagram is so huge? There's so many people.
It is. You can definitely get lost in there. Like I mean, there's a lot of people that I follow. I don't necessarily always get to be able to keep up on their stuff regularly, but in joining Instagram, like I just looked for, like looking for hashtags of like comic art, comic books, superheroes, drawing, sketches, art, just looking for anything, that's attached to those hashtags or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I find, and then, it pulls up people's images and then you can go to their page or whatever. And then just looking at the people's work, and like, if I look at it, not to sound like I'm being like overly critical or anything like that, but if I look at their stuff and I'm like, wow, this is really cool, whether it's comics, painting, photography, like whatever, like I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'll go through their page, like, like a lot of their stuff, and a lot of times I'll just message them and just be like, hey, like I really like your stuff, like, looking forward to seeing more or stuff like that.
Do you direct
And
or leave a
yeah,
comment?
yeah, no, and like no, I'll direct message them, and then like sometimes I'll also leave comments on their images, on their posts, but a lot of times like I'll just direct message them and be like, hey, like your stuff's really cool, I really like it a lot.
Cool.
And you just keep doing that, and you keep following people and keeping up on their stuff. Or sometimes I'll see someone that I've been following for a while, they'll post something, I'm like, oh, like feel like I haven't kept up on their stuff, and I just kind of, if I have a second, I'll go back and catch up on their work or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. That's
You know,
awesome.
and just
Yeah,
kind of just maintaining as much communication as you can with them, just like keeping up on their stuff, showing appreciation for it.
great. Yeah. We have a question from Comics on Lockdown, which is, have you considered Patreon?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, I know Patreon is a thing. I know, not, I don't know personally. I know a lot of people that do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's one of those things where I just haven't looked into it enough to like, kind of incorporate that into my regimen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I've thought about it, but I also haven't explored it to see what it would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it's like I don't know if I have the time to commit to it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not against it.
Cool. What about a Kickstarter? Have you ever considered that?
I For the Sidney James book, I tried Indiegogo, just because I know Indiegogo offers they have the flex funding option for whatever you're raising, and then for me it's because I didn't read the fine print.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was like you got to keep what you raised,
Yeah.
and then what happened, like what I learned the hard way was like, unless you don't get to keep what you raise unless you raise a minimum of $100.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the way that I approach doing, I mean, so I'm gonna try Kickstarter for this coming book.
Okay.
Because like looking at what I did, I'm like, okay, I probably set my goals a little too high on that.
Mm-hmm.
What is like, I'm gonna try the Kickstarter, set a smaller amount
Mm-hmm.
for the target goal, because what I do is like I just finish the book, like I do the book, have it ready to go, and then just basically I'm just trying to raise the money for the printing.
Right. Yeah.
And setting a smaller goal,
Mm-hmm.
I think would probably be more realistic for me. And just trying to approach it that way, because I know a lot of resources that are out there to kind of help make a Kickstarter a little bit more successful, or the potential to be more successful. Other people who have done it, with better success than me, and just trying to tap into some of that.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I want to go on. So, oh, actually, yeah. So, I don't want to end things on that note. What I would
Okay.
is actually about your characters. You had said that each of your characters is a different aspect of you, of your personality. What are they?
Um, uh, I was trying to think of something clever to say there and lost. All right. If yeah, when I've really thought about it, the four main characters that I have, Bernie, Sydney, Adrian, and then the fourth one that I'm gonna eventually do, Anne. I thinking about it, like they all have their own personalities. They have their own different little idiosyncrasies to them and stuff like that. Different abilities and stuff, but they also all kind of represent different aspects of my own personality. Like Bernie, for me, is kind of the part of me that highly to problematically introverted part of me that really just is sometimes too comfortable being by himself.
No, introverts are awesome. Love
What's that?
Introverts are awesome, though.
Yeah, we have our strengths. Yes. So like I would be completely content, if I'm just alone in my studio all day with a podcast or something playing, if I'm at a coffee shop just sitting and just drawing all day, I would not be bothered by that at all.
It does sound nice.
Yeah, sometimes. But also I know that, like, it's good to be a social animal too. It's good to interact with people, family and friends and stuff like that. So like he's that part of me. Sydney is the part of me that kind of recognizes that the world isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and can kind of be a little like harsh about it at times, but like is doing that because like she wants to try to help make it a little bit better for other people and have them not maybe have to endure some of those things. Hodges is, for all intents and purposes, like he's kind of a child in me. He's that part that like still kind of like believes in magic and symbolism and the fantastical stuff, and is just very sort of like okay, just easygoing about all of it, like sees the world in just those different ways. And and then Anne is the part of me that is like really trying to express myself. She has her own set of abilities in the stories, and her own story of kind of how she got to where she is. But she's also in the story, she's also in a band, and she fronts a band, and she sings and plays guitar for a band, and it's that's a way that she's trying to express herself and fit in and just be a part of of that world. And so like they all kind of represent those different aspects of me, and it's really kind of like, in a way, it's sort of like gestaltish therapy. A way, it's like kind of taking these fragmented or fractured pieces and working towards this unification of these things. Because in the book, all these characters, like they don't know each other yet. They all have a singular person in common, and that, for all intents and purposes, that fifth person knows each of them in certain ways, but they don't know about each other yet. And so the four books are kind of building up to that sort of coming together, as it were. So yeah, that's kind of who these characters are to me.
Awesome. Actually, when you said therapy, that's a perfect segue, because Comics on Lockdown just asked another question, which was, as a therapist, did you incorporate psychological aspects into your story?
I try to.
Okay.
Like I try to, because oddly enough, that fifth character that they all have in common is a therapist. Not necessarily their therapists. Not all of them. But like I do have scenes in the first two books where like they, two of the characters are in a therapy session, not with each other, but like independent of each other.
Yeah.
And I try to incorporate, elements, in terms of like verbiage, in terms of like, just sort of certain therapeutic techniques in the interaction between those two characters, to keep it, believable, relatable. But also because the stories really aren't, in my opinion, they aren't necessarily about like what these characters can do. It isn't about like how many trucks can Byrne lift over his head, like how many monsters can Sydney catch or whatever. It's not about that, but it's more about like who are these people and how are they feeling about having to be in these positions and deal with these things while also, just being people in general.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that I feel like stories these days, that's more what people want to see in characters.
Mhm.
Um, unless you can do it right, where it is all about those kinds of things, like the how many trucks they can lift, how hard they can fight. But if you can do it in a
Mhm.
fun way, but usually people want to see depth, and especially with superheroes genre these days, they have to keep finding new ways to present it, and getting into these characters, the human side of them is more interesting
Yeah,
these days.
yeah. And like I kind of want to, like, in those therapy moments in the books, kind of like show that, because that's kind of what I guess like the focus is, I guess, a little bit, and but like still trying to keep it fun and entertaining and funny in a way. Like in the Sydney book is where I kind of at towards the end introduce Hodges in a way, because the books all kind of roll into each other. Um, and again, he's just sort of kind of, all right, this is something we got to deal with.
Of course.
Where like she's looking at this thing and she's like, all right, any words of advice, Mr. Magic Man, what do you got? He's like, I don't know, don't eat yellow snow, don't make snow angels in dog parks. I don't know. Just
Definitely.
like, figure it out. Like, you know.
That's awesome. Well,
So
yeah, that's all. Oh no, go ahead. You were saying something?
no, I was just sort of just wrapping up at, like, I mean, I try to, have the serious notes, but also, like, comics are just kind of supposed to be fun, and, just trying to make it like fun in a way.
Definitely. I think that's a great, well, a good way to start ending things, but also a
Mhm.
great, I think it's a good approach just for comics because, well, it's like you said, if it becomes work, if you're not, it becomes a full-time thing, but also, remember to enjoy making comics because that's why you wanted to do it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's again, we're dealing with, you know, like things that are, supposed to be, fun and funny and interesting, and where you kind of suspend belief or suspend disbelief, I guess.
Mhm.
And it should be fun, and because that's kind of why I think we are doing it, because like it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much
No
for
problem.
taking the
Thank
time.
you.
Great interview. So many good answers, and really get to learn more about your story and where you're going with it, and hopefully things open up again. More
Yeah,
fun things happen.
I'm hopeful. Like I don't want to say, like, like I don't want to be definitive about it, but like I'm hopeful.
Yeah, same.
And thank you for the opportunity too. This
Oh,
was
pleasure.
this was a big thing to check off my list.
Oh, great. Good. Definitely. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who tuned in. That's Jam Creates as well as Comics on Lockdown. Thank you guys for hanging out in the stream. Comics says cool show, and he says thank you to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a great day, and keep making comics, and stay safe, of course. Okay. Bye.
Bye.